Blue Retro now. We're going to be speaking about your time at Chelsea. I mean, how did it all start for you, Neil? Because you was at the club for a very long time working.
Yeah. Uh, uh, um, I became a journalist, not intentionally. I got involved in starting a community newspaper in Earls Court, where I'd been living after I left university, and I just managed. It was not a great place in the 1970s, Earls Court, not because there were so many Australians passing through it, but because there were so many people passing through it, and the people who were actually residents there were kind of trampled on, and there were juggernauts going down the main Earls Court Road day and night. It was just appalling. So I sort of got involved in a lot of campaigns to make life better there. And I managed to get a lot of stuff in national newspapers. And in those days, you had to be a member of the NUJ, National Union of Journalists, to get anything in newspapers. And I just got so much in through doing this. I got invited to join as a freelancer. So I did. So suddenly I was a journalist. But I never learnt the ropes as such. But some very intelligent people taught me the ropes. So I didn't need that. And a few years later, uh, during Thatcher's prime ministership, she introduced this idea of community radio, which wasn't real community radio at all. It was much broader than that, much bigger, much more capitalist than that. And this bank of local newspapers, 13 of them, the London newspaper group across South and West London, wanted to start a community radio station, which would have been probably about a third to a half of London, so it wouldn't have been much community. Uh, and they didn't really know any community journalists apart from me. So they invited me on. And I didn't really want to go, but it was too good an opportunity to turn down. And I got hold of the chairman, who I knew the editor of the London newspaper group. I didn't know the chairman. And I met him at these board meetings. And I kept saying to him, your sports coverage is crap, which it was. I wasn't lying. Get yourself a sports editor, get someone to cover Fulham, someone to cover Queen's Park Rangers, and me to cover Chelsea. And I kept on and on at him. In the end, the editor phoned me up and said, will you come in and discuss being sports editor? And I didn't want to be. I had a load of freelance work at the time, and it didn't really suit me. And I had one young child and not long another on the way. So it just didn't suit me. So I said, no, get someone to do it. Get someone to cover Fulham, someone else QPR, and I'll cover Chelsea. So about a month later, he phoned me again and said, you don't get it. We got a small budget. It's you doing everything, or we'll get someone else. So we need an answer. So I took it. So in February 86, I became the sports editor of the newspaper. One of the first games I did as the sports editor was Chelsea 5, Manchester City 4 in the ZDS final at Wembley. Another of the early ones I did was Oxford United 3, Queen's Park Rangers 0 in the League Cup final at Wembley. And in September, I got a call out of the blue from British Telecom saying, we're starting a premium phone line for football clubs.
Club call.
And club call indeed. And we need someone to do Queen's Park Rangers. Now, at the time, the chief executive of Queen's Park Rangers was actually a sports journalist called Dennis Signey, who worked for Haters, the writing agency, the journalist agency, but he'd taken on this job as the chief exec, and he liked what I'd written after the 3-0 defeat for QPR at Wembley, where I said, yeah, it was shocking, it was terrible, but it was better than 90 other clubs managed, and it was better than Liverpool, who they beat in the semi-finals. I went to that at Loftus Road, and Chelsea, who they beat in the quarterfinals, where I went to both legs, obviously. In years to come, it might well be remembered as one of Rangers' great seasons, great triumphs to have got there. And they've not been back to Wembley in a major trophy since. I was right. But and deservedly so, not me back. And he liked that attitude. And although we'd never met, he put my name forward to do their club call. So I said, yeah, yeah, I can do that. And they asked me what radio I'd ever appeared on. So I did what anyone would do and lied, and said, I've done a lot of radio because I've been interviewed a lot in my campaigns. So I just wheeled off all the radio stations I've been on. And I had actually done a bit as well. So they said, okay, we'll take you. They didn't ask for any references or anything. They said, we'll take you. So I said, I'm a Chelsea supporter. Can I do Chelsea as well? And they said, oh, we're signing them up next week. Yeah. And I was in. And the first recording I did for them, it was before modern technology, so you had to do it down the phone, and they taped it reel to reel and then put it out. After they taped it, they put it through a machine and put it out. The first one I did for them was a game, and they told me they wanted a pre-match, 4-minute report, midway in the first half, 4 minutes, halftime, 4 minutes, or updates whenever there was a goal, 4 minutes. Well, it all went wrong, because the game was Chelsea 2, Nottingham Forest 6 in September 1986. And I'd be doing a 4-minute after a goal had gone in and another goal would go in. And they thought I was taking the piss. But it was mayhem. In those days, the press box at Stamford Bridge was hanging off the roof of the West Stand over the seating, the old West Stand. And I was in there at an hour to kick-off, or 3/4 of an hour to kick-off, 3/4 of an hour to kick-off. In those days, the teams were announced 45 minutes before kick-off. You had to get them into the referee. Then it went to an hour. Now it's an hour and a quarter. And the phone rang in the press box. And I think it was Brian, who's only just retired in his late 80s, who was in the press box. And he said, you're Neil, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, it's John Hollins on the phone for you. He was manager at the time. And he was phoning me up and giving me the team. I mean, it was just ludicrous. My first day at work as a Chelsea representative. So I put the team out and what have you. And I saw him afterwards to get post-match interview. Which was the first time I'd met him. And I said to him, you don't want to be doing that. 45 minutes before the game, phoning me. There must be a better way of doing that. And he said, well, you tell him. So I did. So my disagreements with hierarchy started there. And I stopped that straight away. I mean, the manager doesn't want to be phoning someone doing
a bit above his pay grade, isn't it? And with John Neal, before my time, but he did a good job at Chelsea, didn't he? A very good job.
John Neal, yeah, with Ian McNeill. If you'd have said to John, many years later, when Claudio Ranieri was the manager, I organised John Neal coming back and watching a game in the director's box. And when I called him to set it up, he wouldn't come unless he could bring Ian McNeill, who was his assistant at Chelsea, as well. Because Ian McNeill was the scout who basically went out and got all the players. And of course, in '83, after we'd had our worst season ever and only survived with Clive Walker's goal at Bolton, in '83, we signed Eddie Niedzwiecki, Nigel Spatman, Kerry Dixon, Pat Nevin. Did we sign Joe McLaughlin? And we actually signed, people forget this, Alan Hudson, who never played a game for us when he came back. Yeah, and that transformed the club. So Ian McNeill was a very interesting person as well. He was scout at Arsenal when George Graham was manager. After John Neal left us and he left, and he told me that George Graham would not sign a player unless he'd been watched 3 times away from home, because that told you the personality. And George Graham, who people forget, for 2 years was a wonderful second centre forward at Chelsea. I mean, an absolutely marvellous player, George Graham. And went to us, and Tommy Baldwin came to us, who was the leader of the team, of course. But yeah, and people forget about Tommy Baldwin, by the way. The late Tommy, what a great bloke he was. But people forget that not only did he come in a swap for George Graham, like Ashley Cole came in a swap for Willie Gallas from Arsenal, but Tommy married a famous media personality in Gabrielle Crawford, who had left Michael Crawford, the famous comedian musical star, to shack up with Tommy. So I don't know, things go round in circles, don't they? I wonder if we should swap anyone for an Arsenal player now who can marry somebody who's you wouldn't bother marrying them now, would you? Just shack up. Yeah,
And
I've
of
got to
course,
think about that. Who it should
and
be.
of course, all the eras you've been supporting Chelsea and all those great teams. What's your favourite memory as a Chelsea supporter? This is a very hard question, or it might be an easy question.
Um, I always tell the story that my first game was in late 1959, September maybe 1959. Chelsea beat Everton 1-0. Jimmy Greaves scored. Don't really remember the goal. I remember two offside goals being disallowed and not understanding why. I sat in the old newsstand, as it was then called, North Stand, the one on stilts, which shook when Jimmy Greaves taking a corner down in front of me, and the leather ball curling in. I mean, it blew my mind. That's what blew my mind. But of course, there was no match of the day. There was nothing. So the only thing you knew from the back pages of the newspaper, which when you were six, wasn't a lot. Tottenham were the best team in the land. Tottenham were top of the league and running away with the league, and they were the best team. And so September on, all the kids at school, and I was at school in Kingston, in southwest London, all the kids at school started supporting Tottenham. And I was thinking, and I wanted to stick with Chelsea. My dad wanted me to support Everton. He knew the chairman of Everton and fancied swanking around the directors' boxes of London whenever Everton were in town. And that's why the first game was Chelsea-Everton. But Chelsea. So we got to Easter 1960, and we've been to 4 games, of which Chelsea-Everton was the only Chelsea game. The other 3 were all Everton games. I don't remember where. One was Tottenham and Arsenal, West Ham, Fulham, maybe Arsenal, West Ham. I'm not sure. And I was holding out, but everyone at school was going the other way. And my dad said to me over Easter, "It's Tottenham Chelsea Easter Monday. Why don't we go? And you can decide for once who you're going to, for good, who you're going to support." And so you could do that in those days because you didn't have to get a ticket a month in advance, 2 months, a year in advance, a season ticket on your phone. So I can still remember him driving up the North Circular Road, Easter Monday, 1960, and saying to me, "Tottenham are top of the league, but they've not been so good recently. Chelsea were in the relegation zone. It was 2 down in those days, not 3, for quite a long time. And they suddenly brought this foreign kid, a teenager, in goal. And they've won virtually every game since. And they're now mid-table." So we get to the game. And in those days, the Tottenham players' tunnel was in the corner of the stadium. And we were sat behind the goal, my dad and me. Yeah, we were sat. We weren't standing behind the goal with the tunnel to our right in the corner. And Tottenham came out and battered Chelsea. And this kid saved everything he got. He caught everything. He saved everything. And he bounced the ball to the edge of his area, kicked it 300 miles in the air, and it landed 3 feet in front of him, and Tottenham came back again. And that was the whole game. Jimmy Greaves scored the only goal of the game for Chelsea. We won 1-0, but the kid was the star of the game. And at the end of the game, something happened that would never happen now. Danny Blanchflower, future manager of Chelsea in the late 1970s, captain of Tottenham, lined his team up on the pitch, on the halfway line. And when the kid came from the opposite end of the pitch to walk towards the tunnel, he made every Tottenham player shake his hand. I fell in love. And in those days, of course, you didn't even have transistor radios. You couldn't find out the other scores. So you were reliant on the scores going up on the big uh, the big signs with the letters on the pitch. And lo and behold, it went up. Burnley had beaten whoever they were playing, had gone above Tottenham, uh, and as a result, Burnley won the league in 1960 and denied Tottenham, who at that stage had still only won it once in their history.
You made the right decision, Neil.
Pardon?
You made the right decision.
Well, I mean, at starters, you mean to go on, isn't it? And of course, the kid wasn't foreign. He was born in Putney, and his name was Peter Bonetti, and he was my first hero, and went on to play 729 games and become a friend. Yeah, so my favourite era started there, and it lives till this day. Honestly, it lives till this day. I can. I've I can name games of every era that just do it for me. But if I had to, I mean, obviously the you got the Doherty era, then the Sexton era, the Osgood Hudson Cook era, the Eddie McCready era, the Nevin Dixon Speedy era, the John Neal, and then the Glenn Hoddle era. And then I do think the 18-month sexy football era of Ruud Gullit takes some beating. But then the more professional Vialli era, and then Ranieri building. And then I still think that the first era of Mourinho was the best managed era. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, all those matches that we would have gone to unbeaten, wasn't it 3 seasons at home?
Oh yeah. Well, when he came and we lost one, which was Barcelona in the Champions League in 2005 in the group stage when Delorno got sent off for
Messi dived, didn't he? I think.
I don't think he dived. I think he was pushed over, but I think the 7 rolls into the Chelsea penalty area were what tipped it. And all that crap about him being a guy of sportsmanship must have been blown away in everybody's heads in the 2022 World Cup, when some of his conduct was absolutely reprehensible. But because he was Lionel Messi, nobody said anything. But hey, what a player.
Oh, yeah. I mean, before that game, I think did he score a hat-trick against us or 2 goals at the Bridge? Before that time, he played against us about 7 or 8 times. He never scored, did he?
Well, he never scored against John Terry.
No.
It was the whole lie. He never scored against John Terry. And by the way, neither did Luis Suarez. Never scored against John Terry. And he played Premier League, of course.
Yeah.
So if you're having a debate about who is the best central defender in Premier League history, just tell everybody to get a life. It's John Terry, and the debate's over.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, I see them all the time. Is it Vidic? Is it Ferdinand? Is it Van Dijk?
Good players. Yeah. Top players.
But not Terry.
No.
And what you were saying earlier about your favourite era, I think that is true. It's when you first start supporting your club a lot of the time. For me, it's the 90s, the era you was on about with Gullit, Vialli, and sexy football. Yeah, I love that. Fantastic.
Well, I mean, it wasn't just Rudy. If you think of the first goal of the Rudy era, we drew 0-0 at Southampton in the first game, and it was not great. And then we struggled at home to Middlesbrough till Di Matteo hit a 30-yarder that went in the corner, and he went down and posed with his arms out, and everybody joined in. I think Johnson somebody was the first there, and just Chelsea style hit the roof. It was absolutely brilliant. It was just superb. And I suppose it all climaxed really the following season with the 6-1 at the Lane. which was just wonderful football. And by the way, one of the all-time great Chelsea goals was in that game. And it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. So everybody should go back to that goal. And I think it was the 3-1 or the 4-1 goal, something like that. And Frank Leboeuf hit about a 60-yard pass, as Frank Leboeuf used to do. And Dan Petrescu ran through and touched a volley past the advancing goalkeeper. And it was such a wonderfully light touch. Nobody took on just what genius it was from Super Dan. And it is one of the great goals of Chelsea history, but it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. I don't think television quite saw exactly what was happening, but go back and have a look at that goal because it was genius.
Yeah. And with that 90s team, of course, we won the FA Cup in 97, and that was a huge deal to Chelsea back then, wasn't it?
Oh, it was before the FA Cup had been downgraded, and it was still. I still don't think we even had two teams going into the Champions League, so I think it was still only one. And it was a big deal, yeah. Especially as during the cup run, we'd gone 2-0 down to Liverpool at half-time at home and come back and won 4-2 in one of the great Stamford Bridge games.
Yeah.
In which Dan Petrescu was a legend again, because if you remember, I think it was Steve McManaman had waved the 2-0 at him as he walked off the pitch at half-time. And there was a big argument after a delay, after a foul or something. And Petrescu got up, walked up to McManaman and put 4-2 fingers in his chest and just walked on. Wonderful moment.
Yeah, that was a sensational match, of course. 2-0 down at half-time, as you say, and then they bring on Sparky at half-time, and he changed everything.
He got well. I mean, in the second half, this is the advantage you get from working within. People don't quite realise what happened. John Barnes was playing central midfield for Liverpool, and he was running things in the first half. He'd lost all his pace by then. But he was still a player of huge quality, and he was running everything. So Rudy went as manager. He brought on Mark Hughes. I can't remember who he took off, but he brought on Mark Hughes, and he went 3 up: Sparky, Luca, and Gianfranco. And he had 3 in midfield behind them. So that would have been Dennis Wise. Gus Player was injured, wasn't he?
Di Matteo, wasn't it?
No, Dennis Wise, Dan Petrescu, maybe Jody, I can't remember, one other. And he played 3-1-3-3. 10 players, 3-1-3-3. And the 1 was Di Matteo. And he put Di Matteo on John Barnes. And that's what stopped Liverpool playing. And then Sparky got the first goal, Franco the second, and Luca the next 2. And years later, I bumped into John Barnes at Kingstonian at a reserve game and asked if I could interview him for Chelsea TV, Club Call, whatever it was at the time. And he was fine. And I brought that game up and told him what Rudy had said he'd done. And I'd forgotten John Barnes went to Newcastle. And Rudy was his manager for a while at Newcastle. And John Barnes said, yeah, Rudy told me himself that he did that, he said. And I think that's why he never picked me, because he thought he knew how to mark me out of the game.
And famously, Ruud Gullit fell out with Alan Shearer at the time, didn't he, at Newcastle?
Yeah, I loved Rudy. He's just one of the all-time greats for me. But the one thing I disagreed with him about was Alan Shearer. He said to me when he was at Chelsea, Rudy, and of course, Shearer's career divides in 2. And the division was the injury he got at Goodison Park in that mercantile credit tournament in which Chelsea took part. So I was in Goodison Park when Shearer got the injury. His leg just crumbled. And he was never the same player again. He was still a top centre forward, but he was never the same player. But Rudy said to me, he was never that good. I don't know why everyone loved him in England. He didn't have a trick. He doesn't have a trick. I said, he does. He's got one great trick. He said, what? I've never seen it. I said, he gets the ball 30 yards out and he smashes it into goal every flipping time. I said, he's the best centre forward this club has ever faced. And he was. He would still be my number one centre forward, opposition centre forward. Thierry Henry, maybe, in his prime since then. It would be between those two. I can't think of anyone else of that level. But it's funny, talking about Messi, my left winger, without the first person on the team sheet in opposition to Chelsea would be Ronaldinho.
Oh yeah, class, wasn't he? I remember that game at the Bridge where we won 4-2, and that's probably the best goal I've seen from an opposing player at the Bridge.
And Petr Cech says he didn't know it had gone in. He didn't see the ball. He didn't see the shot. He didn't realise it was in the goal until the crowd responded. Yeah, and I stood next to him in the Camp Nou before one of our games over there, and because he had dreads, he looked bigger than he was. He's actually not. He's not that big. He's about 5'10" at most. But my God, is he strongly built? So strongly built, and he is the best player I've ever seen. And for technique and for loving what he's doing, I bet he was the best night out as well.
Yeah, I expect so. Yeah,
I'd have good Johnson told me he was after he went to Barcelona.
Oh, did he? Oh, right. Yeah, people forget that as well, that Idol went there to Barcelona briefly, didn't he?
Not briefly, he was there for several years.
Yeah,
he got a Champions League medal in 2009 against Arsenal. No, not against Arsenal, against Manchester United.
But I mean, he was there 2 or 3 seasons, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Sort of near the end of his career, I think.
3 seasons.
I remember. Yeah.
No, peak. But he was never really a first choice.
He was better at Chelsea, I thought.
He was
better at Chelsea, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Than at Barcelona. Yeah, him and Jimmy were a really good partnership, weren't they? Under Ranieri. And what are some of your favourite memories working on Chelsea TV? Because of course you worked on there as well.
Yeah. I spent 2 years trying to find Paul Cannavale. I couldn't find him. I was determined to get Cannavale back into the club. And I didn't find him. I found his sister. His sister was trying to get him back into Chelsea. And I got to him through her. And I invited him in. And he was okay. He was a bit of a mess. You know, he'd had 2 bouts of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He'd had 3 bouts of rehab for crack cocaine. He'd had this illness through breakdown of his immunity system. And that had nearly killed him more than any of the other activities. And he needs to get his life together, but he wasn't down in the depths. So he came in, and I set up a couple of things for him to do on TV. And then I did a Legends with him in that series that I used to do. And he is a legend, and he was a legend, not so much for his football, although there was enough of that in there to make a story out of it, but because of who he was, what he went through, the way he conducted himself. And as he became a friend, what I learned is how he's come out the other side. After we'd done all the things we did that evening, we went down the Shed Bar, as I think it was then called, before Frankie's. And we sat there and I said, who do you want to talk to? I'll phone him up. And he went through 5 or 6 people he wanted to talk to. And one of them was Pat Lemon. And he was on the phone to Pat for ages. They hadn't talked for years. And Pat said to him, have you got any footage of yourself? And he went, no, don't be stupid. And Pat said, I've got loads. He said, I'll burn a CD for you and I'll send it to you. Where should I send it? 1 week later, Cannon's got a CD in the post from Pat with a load of his action on it, including obviously the Sheffield Wednesday 4-4 and a load of the action on it. And his self-esteem went up and up and up. And we got to the point where I said to him, I'd like to walk him around the pitch at half-time, first game of the season. And he was iffy about it because he didn't know what kind of response he'd get. And even on the day of the game, when he came in, he sat in the press box with me. On the day of the game, he was not sure he could do it. And I remember saying to him, I said, I know your worries, but my job is to deliver the crowd to you. And I know my job. I can do that. And in the end, he agreed to come out. And before he came out, I said on the pitch, there are an awful lot of people here today who will want to say, I'm sorry for what you did in the 80s. This is your chance. And he came out and the response was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So he went round, fantastic, positive response, which he'd never had in his life. He'd never had this. All he'd had was abuse. And when, yeah, there was those quiet chants of Canterville, 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 but not really rock solid like it was here. But the best moment, however good that was, the best moment for him was after the game. And he walked out of the that old entrance, which was kind of a main entrance opposite the railway track, into the offices at Chelsea and where the press room was. He walked out and there was a queue of about 200 people who wanted to say sorry. But he couldn't believe it. And that queue grew. It didn't get smaller, it grew. And he was there for about an hour meeting people and just shaking their hand and just accepting apologies. And now he's got a rum named after him, a sweet named after him. And he's, you know, I know a lot of black players who came through that period and got a lot of abuse. And one thing I've learned is you're lucky or you're unlucky, in the way that if you have a car crash, if you get scarred, physically scarred, it's not your choice. It's nothing to do with your personality. You're lucky or you're unlucky. And I think if you get mentally scarred, if you've been through years of really serious abuse, how you come out, you're lucky or you're unlucky. You get scarred or you don't get scarred. And I know quite a few people who have been quite badly scarred. And it's nothing to do with their personality. It's just they got scarred. Canners didn't get scarred. He didn't get scarred. He's just the guy he would have been anyway without it. And that's fantastic. So he's lucky in that sense, but he's made the most of his life. Yeah.
And also his career sadly ended. Wasn't it a tackle against Liverpool?
No, it was because he moved to Reading. It was a Reading game. I don't know. I can't remember who it was against, but he was terrorising someone for Reading in what was then the second division.
Oh, maybe I'm getting mixed up, but I thought his career ended because of a bad tackle. I thought he had a bad injury.
It was a bad tackle, but it was for Reading.
Oh, for Reading.
Yeah.
Oh.
We got rid of him after a pre-season fight at Aberystwyth between him and David Speedy, in which Speedy attacked him with a golf club. Um, and it was a racist issue, which Speedo has since apologised for. But the club didn't cover itself in glory, and it was Canners that they let go. Yeah. Mm.
I mean, it must be interesting some of the inside stories you might have over the years.
Yeah, this is actually a very important point. I insisted to all the players all the time in the 32 years I was there that I would never write a book about my time at Chelsea. And I have been asked on many occasions to write a book, and I've always said, no way, no way.
I'd like to know, you won't answer, but stories like about the air rifle. Do you remember Ashley Cole and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was in the academy, so I didn't really know an awful lot about that. But um, uh, Ash, I mean,
What
Ash did
great.
some really dumb things when he was at Chelsea. Some really dumb things, but he was one of the most intelligent footballers I have ever seen, because he spent his Chelsea career. He started off playing behind Ian Robin, and then played most of it behind Florent Malouda, neither of whom were ecstatic about tracking back. And Ashley Cole spent most of his Chelsea career defending one against two. And somehow he just knew how to lay traps and do it. He was a genius. He was an absolute genius on the football field. And of course, he mostly Cristiano Ronaldo, only in his first spell at United, only got one goal against Chelsea. And that was partly because Ash, he was playing on the right wing for a lot of that, had him in his pocket. And Ash I used to say to him, I remember I asked him once on telly, what do you do on the far post? Because you're 5 foot nothing and he's 6 foot whatever. And he said, you've got to find other ways of defending against all those guys at the back post. He said, with Cristiano, I just ruffle his hair.
Yeah. I mean, he was so quick as well, wasn't he? And so intelligent as a footballer. Ashley Cole.
Yeah.
Yeah, class.
Yeah.
What do you think was your favourite interview that you did at Chelsea with a player?
With a player? Oh, a
Or a
million.
manager? Or a manager.
A million. I mean,
Hard to choose. But...
yeah, no, a million, a million. I mean, I got caked in batter so many times and thrown
I
in
remember.
lakes and ponds and everything. Uh, uh, Even before television, I got thrown in a bath at Wembley so many times and what have you. It was just it was like a rite of passage. But I couldn't say. I mean, uh, after a year of doing club call for Queen's Park Rangers and Chelsea, and by the way, I used to go down the training ground and I'd know the team because obviously you see them preparing for a game. So when the teams were playing each other, QPR and Chelsea, and after a year, I got given Wimbledon as well. So I was going down, and when the teams were playing each other, the managers would phone me up on a Friday night and say, give us the other team. I know you know it. I say, I do know it. I'm not doing it. And I know yours, and I'm not giving it to them. And I used to have to stand my ground all the time. But I got calls from the likes of Johnny Hollins, Bobby Gould, Jim Smith. Give us your team. And but in 1987, they called me up. I was actually shortlisted to do commentary for Middlesex County Cricket Club, which I really fancied, sitting in Lords supping beer with my feet up doing commentary all day. But they phoned me up and said, "But take it, you're not going to do it. We've signed up Wimbledon and Chelsea and QPR are so successful. We're going to do them through summer," which we weren't intending to do. So uh, so I had to go down to Wimbledon pre-season. They were away and find something to fill 4 minutes of premium phone time with. And there was this teenage winger there who'd broken his wrist. and hadn't gone on the tour. So my first ever Wimbledon interview was with an 18, 19-year-old Dennis Wise. Yeah. And obviously him, Vinnie Jones, Dave Besant, Terry Phelan all came to Chelsea.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And Don Howe. Don Howe was the coach and came to Chelsea. So yeah. And obviously Bobby Gould had been at Chelsea, who managed Wimbledon to win the FA Cup, but their chief scout, who got all the players in, was Ron Stewart, who was the assistant to Dave Sexton and Eddie McCready, and managed us for 9 months after Sexton left. Yeah.
And Dennis Wise, he was a real character, wasn't he? And fantastic captain. He was the original Mr. Chelsea, wasn't he, really?
No, the original Mr. Chelsea was Roy Bentley, for me, who I never saw play for Chelsea, but I got to know very well. And I mean, all that 55 team, I mean, God, Stan Willemsey, left back. I love Stan Willemsey. He was such an entertaining guy. He was such a hard man. If you ever find his Legends, have a look at that. He's great. I do Legends with him, the stories he told. Wonderful character he was. Eric Parsons played every game in 54, 55 winger. We signed him from West Ham. And he went and lived in Worthing down on the south coast, I think it was.
Again,
they were all a Mr. Chelsea. Ozzy.
Yeah, Ozzy.
Ozzy, Chopper, the Cat. They were all Mr. Chelsea's. Webby.
But I mean, in terms of, I think Dennis Wise, people always say John Terry, Mr. Chelsea. I think Dennis was before that, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Kerry in the 80s, Pat in the 80s. Yeah. So no, Ray Wilkins.
Yeah.
In the 70s, no, lots of Mr. Chelsea's. But Wisey was critical to overseas players coming in and bedding down. And when the revolution happened, he was absolutely critical. He got them drinking, he got them swearing, he got them understanding how physical it was, practicing two-footed tackles. He was top draw. And as someone who was a rogue and wasn't born to captaincy, he became a great captain. John Terry was born to captaincy. Dennis became a great captain.
Definitely. And he would often do a lot of pranks as well. And I remember there was this story about how Gianfranco Zola was first of all learning English for the first time, and then he was reading a book for the first time, and Dennis tore out the pages. He was halfway through the book, and it was as if it ended there, which was quite funny.
Yeah. And Franco never understood it, and he got on a goal drought, and he finally got a goal. We beat someone 6-2 at home, and he got a goal. As they're walking back to the centre circle, Wisey told him then that he still had the pages, and he'd give them back to him now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And also when Vialli was out of the team in the 90s, Dennis Wise on his undershirt, he had "Cheer up, Luca, we love you," didn't he? So in terms of team spirit and
I'll tell you a story. I'm sure I can swear on here.
Yeah, we have already, so it's fine.
We used to have 2 supporters dinners a year. We'd have the Christmas one and the Player of the Year one. And I used to host them. And it was hell to get the players to do anything. They didn't want to do anything publicly. They'd all be there. They'd all be drinking and what have you, and singing on the tables, but they didn't want to do anything too public. And I went up to Wisey and I said to him, "Come on, just say a few words." I can't remember if it was Christmas or end of season. I think it was Christmas. I said, "Just say a few words and wish everyone a Merry Christmas." And he goes, "Oh, it's fine. No." He said, I'll only do it if Franco does it with me. So I went over to Franco, they weren't sitting together. I said, Franco, why is he says he's going up to say something to the supporters and you've got to go up with him? And he goes, yeah, it's okay. So I went dashing back to Wise. I said, yep, Franco's in. So in the end, they got up and they got on a table. I don't remember if there's a platform on the table. I think they were standing on the table. And Wisey just stood up there and he goes, right, Franco, repeat after me. And Franco nodded. And Wisey said, I am. And Franco went, I am the best player in Chelsea Football Club, and everyone else is fucking shit. He's fucking shit. And the place went absolutely ballistic. And they got down, and that's all they had to do. And everyone thought it was just brilliant being there because you got a bit of real dressing room banter. And Franco, nobody believed that Franco would swear or anything like that. Though he did in the dressing room, believe you me. But it was just an absolute moment of genius, managing crowd genius by these two people. And yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
And what was Mourinho like?
Charismatic beyond belief. Uh, First time round, love to compliment people. Not so much second time round. Love to criticize people second time round. But he'd lose his Barney over everything and blow a gasket. You know, I was never employed by the club. I was always a freelancer who had my own company, Spy in the Camp, and the club had my company. So I was on a level with everyone and not on a level with anybody. And if he lost his rag with me, Jose, I used to lose my rag with him. And we had some right old Barneys. But that was fine. He was okay with that. And he was I believe that he had this way of thinking about football that gave him 10 years ahead of everybody else. And that was basically, I mean, I speak to Rui Faria and he'll say it was the methodology that they both had. But for me, all right, it was methodology, but for me, it was the way that they scouted the opposition, exploited their weaknesses, negated their strengths, and that was enough. And Jose made coaching, management, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. And every coaching session was preparation for the next game in different parts, so that when the team went into the game, they knew how they were going to win. And I don't think anybody else was doing that in the same way. And at Porto and at Chelsea and at Inter and even at Real Madrid, and to a lesser extent at Chelsea again, it gave him the head on everybody else. But everybody else started doing it. And after that, he had to come up with new advantages. And I'm not sure he's ever done that. But I think he revolutionized football, but not on the pitch. He revolutionized it off the pitch.
Yeah.
Pep's revolutionized it on the pitch. I don't think, say, Alec Ferguson ever really revolutionized management. He just did it better than anybody else. I suppose the only thing that he did, which wasn't particularly revolutionary, but he again did it better than anybody else, was he said, this team's done enough, and built a new team.
I,
And
I, I do.
because he did it so well, he got time to build that new team in a way that no manager would now.
Yeah. But I do think it was special when he came back the second time and won the Premier League again. Because at the time,
Mm.
I don't think everybody was going to believe that it would happen. They always say never go back, don't they, with managers? So,
And he also got us to the semi-final of the Champions League in his first season back when we lost to Atletico.
yeah,
Thibaut
Costa
Courtois.
scored, didn't he? Penalty, I think.
Yeah, and Juan Fran, the right back, set up both the first two, or the first and third goal at Stamford Bridge because Eden Hazard didn't track back. But that wasn't his play, was it? And of course, Thiago Mendes played for them as well, who was in our title-winning team the first year of Jose. Uh, um, but it was. Absolute genius, absolute genius. But I think he had 10 years on everyone, and I think those 10 years ran out. Um, and yeah, I think we got the best of him.
I suppose another manager that people always admire and always think, oh, if only he would have stayed longer, is obviously Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah. Can I tell you one other, sorry, I want to tell you one other Jose story.
Yeah, sure.
We drew 0-0 with Manchester United in the first leg of the semi-final of the League Cup when we won it in 2005. So it was his first season. And at half time, he got into a right barney with the referee because he thought the referee was being too kind to United. And at the end of the game, he went on and on about the referee. And he was obviously gearing up for the second leg and making sure the referee didn't favour them at Old Trafford. Before the game, I got a phone call out of the blue from someone who I'd never given my number to, but who obviously had the power to get my number. One Brian Adams. Um, and he, obviously, we all knew he was a big Chelsea supporter, and I'd met him several times. And he had got into photography in a big way. And he had a German magazine who took his photographs, and he used to publish them in there. And he wanted to meet Wayne Rooney and take some photographs of Wayne Rooney. So I went round and found the Manchester United press officer and said, Brian Adams was at the game and would love to take some photographs of Wayne Rooney afterwards. Would he be willing? And the press officer came out and said, yes. Where? And I had Chelsea TV had a room to do our interviews in. I said, we'll take him in there and do it in there. So I got Brian Adams in afterwards. Wayne Rooney came in when he was ready and they took some photographs. And Brian Adams was really good, was sort of really energetic, taking them and getting him to overcome his shyness because he was so shy, Wayne Rooney. And I said to him, do you want to stay while we do the interviews? And he went, oh, yeah. So we did a couple of player interviews. And then I went out in the tunnel and I wasn't sure how Jose would react to having Brian Adams in the room. So when he finished, we were always last. When he finished all his stuff, he said, Spy, ready. And I grabbed him and I said, just to warn you, we've got Brian Adams in the room just watching. He said, Brian Adams, the singer. I said, yeah. He said, my wife's favorite. And he went dashing in, and they were all over each other, all over each other. He said, Spy, get camera out, get camera out. He said, I need this on my laptop. And so I'd take a photograph of the pair of them together. I'd taken at that stage dozens and dozens of photographs of Jose with supporters, with this, with that, will you take this photo? And every time the supporter was all smiles and Jose had his, yeah, okay, get it over and done with look on his face. I took this photo and Jose had the biggest smile you have ever seen in the world. And Brian Adams had the, oh God, just another photograph. Although Brian Adams adored Jose. Anyway, Jose did his post-match and he was going off on the referee again. And Brian Adams behind me was going, because he was so pissed off with the referee. And so Jose said, and cheat and cheat and cheat. And that went out, and he got banned, and he got fined, and he blamed me. I never said it, Jose. It never occurred to me that he couldn't say that. Anyway, so yeah, and he got suspended and everything. But I think he got fined 100 grand for that, you know. And yeah, but he and Brian Adams became friends, and yeah, so yeah, but he was in awe of Brian Adams, so it can happen. Jose in awe of someone.
Yeah. And as I was saying with Carlo Ancelotti, a lot of Chelsea supporters feel that he should have been given longer, considering what he did at Real Madrid. That was a great period as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I actually think that for the first 6, 7 months of Carlo's reign, he mostly played, people forget this, he mostly played, what's the shape called? 4-3-2-1. So he had Malouda and Anelka tucked in behind Drogba. And that meant that Lampard and Ballack in a three, or Essien if he was playing, in a three-man midfield, often had to pull wide. Well, there's no way Ballack or Lampard were going to pull wide. They want to get in the penalty area, but there was no way in for them because Anelka and Malouda were these inside forwards ahead of them, and it was a stumbling block. It didn't work, and we got to February, March, and we went out in the Champions League to Inter Milan to Jose, and he changed it. We had one more game, I think, away to Blackburn, in which we drew, and then we went down to Portsmouth, and we were 1-0 up at half time, and he actually changed it to 4-2-3-1 with, I think, Deco behind Drogba. And then after that, he went 4-3-3, and we pummeled everyone for the last 2 months of the season, 2 months of the season, pummeled everyone, and won the league, and played 4-3-3 and stuck with 4-3-3 from then until January 2011, when we signed Fernando Torres, and he had to find a way of getting him in. And when he found out we were definitely signing Torres, he sat down with his coaching staff, who at that stage were Steve Holland and Paul Clement, because Ray had been sat, Ray Wilkins. And he drew up a team, and it was 4-3-1-2 with Drogba and Torres up front and Anelka behind. And that's what he played in that first game against Liverpool, when Torres made his debut. It never worked. Never worked.
Was that game a draw? Just trying to remember. I was at that.
Draw, was it 1-0 to Liverpool? I don't know.
Well, they might have won, yeah. But it was so weird, wasn't it? Because obviously Torres, the first game that he plays for Chelsea, it's against Liverpool. It was odd. But he did all right in the end. You know, didn't live up to the huge expectations, but I think all Chelsea supporters will always remember that goal at the Nou Camp, won't they? 2012.
Yeah, it was a bit like the Gronkia goal against Liverpool that got us into the Champions League in 2004. It didn't matter. Desai's goal against Liverpool and Ramirez's goal against Barcelona, we were winning. All it did was it cemented the win. Of course it mattered, it cemented the win. But the crucial goal was the one before, because we were winning on away goals. When Torres,
you think that's one of our best victories? For me, that's up there as one of the best.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
that team.
So many heroes on the night, but Drogba playing as an advanced left back for most of the game was just quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, Nando, lovely bloke, but it didn't. He came with a knee injury. We should never have signed him. He came with a knee injury, and he couldn't run in the way that he had when he was younger, and we should never have signed him.
That was the season that we signed David Luiz, wasn't it, for the first time as well?
The same January. Yeah. Nuts. Totally nuts.
Great times.
I mean, I did last season actually, uh, before the game with Bournemouth, sitting in Chez Fred having fish and chips in Bournemouth. Um, I started to build uh, a Nutters 11. Uh, so obviously David Luiz was in defence. Um, uh,
Peter Barossa in goal, maybe?
Beto Barotto in goal, captain. Actually, I don't think he was captain, but Barotto in goal. Gee, I've forgotten it now, most of it, but it was
Diego
yeah.
Costa up front, perhaps?
Who?
Diego Costa up front,
Yeah,
perhaps?
definitely. Yeah, John McNaughton midfield, absolute nutter he was, and yeah.
Vinnie
Uh,
Jones?
well, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think Wisey was in there as well. Yeah. So yeah, Nutters 11.
You have
I've
to put that out
been
there.
working. I've been working on an anonymous 11 recently.
Go on.
No, no, I can't find a captain.
Good one. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Neil. It's great to speak to you again. And let's hope this season more of the same. Let's hope.
I think it's going to be a difficult season, and I think everybody needs to understand if it is a difficult season that whereas last season we could put out what I call a midweek 11 against opposition from the conference. In the Champions League, you got to play your best team all the time. And I think it's going to be far greater demands. And it's going to make the league games where people are really only playing one game a week for most of the season, last season. I think it's going to make them much, much tougher. And I think we're going to need a few more experienced and top draw players. And I think we're going to need a little bit more understanding from the supporters. Can I just, before we go, the Joy of Football podcast with me and Martin Tyler, available every week on all major platforms. And we've also got written stuff on Substack.com. Substack.com, also under the Joy of Football, where, as we talked today, I put up a piece about how to bring the atmosphere back to major stadia, which has sort of gone a bit viral. And obviously, I like to think I know a bit about creating atmosphere in stadia from being a pitch host for 25 years. And I find what happens now, not at Chelsea, but right the way across the board, absolutely reprehensible. And UEFA playing music over the medal ceremony for the Conference League, and FIFA bringing out the players one by one. It's a team game, you morons. Bring the gladiators out together. Oh, God. So, an angry piece in there, Substack.com, The Joy of Football, and podcast, The Joy of Football. And
Great.
here I am moaning away, but it's all joy.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Neil. I'll check that out. Thanks for joining us.